You were taught that choosing one side means rejecting the other, that peace is found in retreat and victory in the fight. But the wisest minds in history, from Buddha to Marcus Aurelius, warned us, both extremes lead to suffering. It's not in the noise nor in the silence, but in the precise space between both where clarity lives. We live in a world that thrives on division. You're either all in or completely out, fully committed or absolutely detached, productive or lazy, spiritual or grounded. But what if these choices are illusions? What if they're not opposites but reflections of the same imbalance? Have you noticed how exhaustion disguises itself as ambition, or how indifference often hides behind the mask of calm? Have you wondered why, no matter how far you go in one direction, it never feels quite right? There's a law hidden beneath the chaos. Every extreme gives birth to its opposite. The overgiver becomes resentful. The perfectionist collapses. The warrior without rest becomes the victim of his own battles. And the one who runs from pain ends up running from joy as well. The mind tells you to pick a side, but the soul is asking for something else entirely. It's asking for the space in between, for the stillness within motion, for the silence that doesn't require escape, for the balance that doesn't cancel life but includes it. This is the path almost no one talks about, because it isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't promise instant transformation. It asks for presence, and presence doesn't scream. It listens. So let me ask you, not your mind, but the part of you beneath it. What if the breakthrough you're chasing doesn't lie in doing more, or doing nothing, but in finally learning how to stop swinging? Every part of your life is shaped by rhythm. Wake and sleep, expand and contract, gain and loss. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you are always swinging. But the question is, who's holding the pendulum? And why does it keep swinging so violently? Extremes are seductive. They offer certainty in a world that constantly shifts. You either commit with obsession or abandon with fear. You fall in love until you disappear, or pull away until you no longer feel. You overeat, overthink, overwork, then collapse into silence, emptiness, withdrawal. And you call that balance. But that's not balance. That's recovery from imbalance. In Taoist philosophy, this motion is described as the natural dance of yin and yang, not a war but a cycle. When yin dominates, yang gathers its strength to return. When yang takes over, yin prepares the next correction. But when we interrupt this rhythm, when we cling to one side and reject the other, we become prisoners of the swing. The mind resists what it can't control, so it chases stimulation, validation, emotional certainty. It seeks intensity to avoid stillness. It confuses peace with boredom, and in doing so it fuels the pendulum's arc. Neuroscience confirms what the sages already knew. Your brain is not made for extremes. The amygdala, your fear center, becomes hyperactive when you live in highs and lows. The limbic system floods your body with signals of threat, even when you're alone in your room. That's why you can feel panic with no danger, sadness without cause, urgency with no direction. It's not your fault. It's the pendulum. And the world encourages it. Social media rewards outrage and obsession. Productivity culture glorifies exhaustion. Even spirituality has been turned into a performance of extremes, either hyper-positivity or total nihilism. We're taught to swing harder, not pause longer. But the truth is simple. You are not your moods. You are not the swing. You are the observer. And the moment you remember that, you stop reacting from the edges and start living from the center. So ask yourself honestly, where am I swinging so far that I no longer recognize myself? What have I confused with strength that is actually just imbalance? And what might I discover if I learned to stop reaching for either side? The cost of living off-center. The hidden energy drain. You may not realize it yet, but every time you swing too far in any direction, you pay a price. Not just in time or opportunity, but in life force, in clarity, in presence. The cost of living off-center is not always dramatic. It's subtle, it's quiet. It's the kind of exhaustion you can't explain. It's the fog that creeps into your thoughts without warning. It's the heaviness in your chest when everything is going fine, but nothing feels right. Most people never question it. They think being tired is just part of being human, that anxiety is a sign of being responsible, that overgiving is just love, that controlling everything is just being productive. But what they're actually doing is burning their energy in a constant war with themselves. They are living on the edges, and the edges consume you. The nervous system is designed for balance. It's a living instrument, tuning itself moment by moment based on the signals you give it. When you live in harmony, your breath deepens, your heart finds rhythm, your mind relaxes into clarity. But when you jump between extremes, between obsession and avoidance, between overwork and collapse, your body doesn't know what to trust. So it stays alert, hyperactive, tight, on guard. You might not feel it consciously, but your system is spending energy just to survive your lifestyle. That's why you feel drained after a conversation that should have been simple, why a small decision feels like a burden, why you can't fall asleep even when your body is begging for rest. You are not broken. You are simply uncentered. You've placed your energy in a pattern that doesn't support you. You're leaking power not because you're weak, but because you haven't been taught where your true strength actually comes from. There's a myth that productivity comes from pushing harder, that love comes from giving everything, that success is about the grind. But none of these ideas are sustainable. They're just louder versions of imbalance. The truth is, your deepest power doesn't come from intensity. It comes from conservation, from precision, from choosing not to waste energy on what doesn't serve your center. Energy is sacred, not in a poetic way, in a real, measurable way. Your brain consumes up to 20% of your body's total energy every day. And when your thoughts are scattered, obsessive, reactive, that number rises. You are literally burning your own fuel just trying to stay emotionally afloat. No wonder you're tired. No wonder everything feels harder than it should. You're operating a system that's designed for coherence, on chaos. And let's be honest, it's not just internal. The world rewards extremes. It makes them visible. The one who works until collapse gets applause. The one who never rests is labeled disciplined. The one who denies themselves rest is driven. But inside, that same person is unraveling. They're losing connection to their intuition, to their body, to their center. And what about the spiritual pendulum? The ones who meditate with discipline, visualize endlessly, journal every morning, but do it from fear, from tension, from pressure to evolve, from anxiety about being left behind. That too is imbalance. And no matter how enlightened the tools may be, if the energy behind them is desperate, they can't create peace. They just become another form of performance. Abundance doesn't grow in soil that's constantly being dug up. Presence doesn't rise in minds that never pause. Healing doesn't happen in bodies that are always bracing for the next swing. And manifestation, real manifestation, doesn't come from effort. It comes from alignment. Living off-center means that even your joy becomes short-lived. Even your moments of success are tinged with fear, because your nervous system, your emotional body, your subconscious, they don't trust safety that's built on instability. So you move forward, but you don't feel grounded. You expand, but you don't feel free. You win, but it doesn't feel like victory. And here's the most important part. You're not the only one paying that price. Everyone around you feels it too. Your presence becomes erratic. Your decisions become reactive. Your energy, which could be a force of healing, of coherence, of quiet strength, becomes scattered across unsustainable extremes. People can't feel you because you can't hold yourself. And that disconnection radiates outward like a silent fog. But this isn't a call to shame. It's a wake-up call to awareness, to recognize that the most powerful version of you is not the one who does more, tries harder, sacrifices everything. It's the one who has reclaimed their energy from the edges and brought it back home. The truth is, you don't need more power. You just need to stop giving it away. The middle path is not weakness. It's the center of all power. We live in a culture that worships extremes. The louder voice wins the debate. The fastest wins the race. The most disciplined earns the praise. And somewhere along the way, we internalized a dangerous idea, that balance is for the indecisive, that neutrality means passivity, that moderation is weakness. But the wisest minds to ever walk this earth said the opposite. The true path to power doesn't live in extremes. It lives in the center, the quiet, the space in between, the Tao. The middle way is not avoidance, it's not indifference, it's not some spiritual bypassing where you float above your problems. It is the deepest form of engagement, but with clarity, not chaos. It's the art of living aligned with reality as it is, not as your fears distort it. In Taoist thought, this is the path of Wu Wei, the state of effortless action. Not because you're lazy, but because your actions are flowing from harmony, not resistance. You're not wasting energy on overcompensation. You're not trying to control every variable. You're simply moving in tune with the larger order of life. Imagine the eye of a hurricane, still, empty, untouched. While everything spins wildly around it, the center remains unmoved. That's the Tao. That's your center. It doesn't push. It doesn't pull. It sees. It knows. It acts only when necessary, and always from presence, never from panic. This is not passive, it's precise, and it's the most powerful place you can live from. Most people think they need more discipline, more motivation, more action, but they don't. What they need is centeredness, alignment, access to the place inside that isn't trying to be anything, do anything, or prove anything, the place that simply is. From there, the right actions arise naturally. The right words come without effort. The right decisions feel obvious. That's the middle way, not an idea, a state. In Buddhism, this principle is ancient. Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, discovered the middle path not in a temple, but in the real agony of extremes. He lived the indulgence of luxury, then the pain of complete deprivation. And it was only when he sat under the Bodhi tree, rejecting both, that he awoke. His enlightenment came not from effort, but from stillness, from the refusal to be pulled by either side. The realization that balance is not something you find, it's something you return to by letting go. And Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor philosopher, echoed the same wisdom centuries later. In his meditations, he wrote of the power of temperance, self-mastery, and inner calm, that the wise man is not thrown by fortune or misfortune because his peace doesn't come from what happens. It comes from where he stands inside himself. The Stoics called it ataraxia, unshakable tranquility. Not apathy, not detachment, but the inner state of a man who no longer lives on the surface of life. He lives in the center. But the question is, why is it so hard for us to stay there? Because the center is silent. And in that silence, you hear yourself. You meet the parts you've been running from, your fears, your compulsions, your stories, your emptiness. The extremes give you a mask, a role to play, a distraction to chase, but the center gives you nothing except yourself. And that's where the real transformation begins. When you stop reacting, when you stop swinging, when you stop looking for meaning in intensity, and instead learn to rest in stillness, you begin to notice that life doesn't need to be pushed or pulled. It unfolds. And your role is not to fight it. Your role is to be fully present with it, participating, yes, but never possessed. Balance is not boring, it's rare, it's sacred. It's the space where your true essence, not your persona, not your wounds, not your roles, can breathe. It's where your nervous system heals, where your decisions become clear, where your heart no longer has to scream to be heard. Because now you're listening. This is why in Taoist thought, the master does not chase results. He aligns with flow. He does not resist change. He dances with it. He does not try to fix everything. He watches it transform itself. That's the paradox. When you stop grasping, life gives. When you stop rushing, time expands. When you stop pushing, energy returns. So ask yourself, what would it mean to live from your center? Not occasionally, but as a way of being. To be the calm in the chaos, the eye in the storm, the breath between the noise. Not because you learned it in a book, but because you remembered it in your bones. Because the truth is, you've always known this place. You've touched it in brief moments, in the middle of a deep breath, in the quiet after a decision, in the stillness of nature. That was your center, and it's always been waiting for you. You don't have to swing anymore. You don't have to prove yourself to one side or another. You don't have to live exhausted by the illusion that intensity equals importance. You can rest now, right here, in the middle. Emotional extremes are not passion. They are leaks in your power. There's a subtle illusion we rarely question, that feeling intensely means living fully, that swinging between emotional highs and lows makes you human, alive, maybe even spiritual. We admire the artist who suffers deeply, the lover who burns completely, the entrepreneur who obsesses endlessly. But what if we're wrong? What if emotional extremes aren't a sign of depth, but a sign of disconnection from the center? Here's the truth. Passion without grounding becomes chaos. Love without inner clarity becomes dependency. Spirituality without structure becomes delusion. Every emotion that moves without awareness is not power, it's leakage. The more you swing between extremes, the more your nervous system becomes reactive, not responsive. And the more reactive you are, the more easily you are manipulated by others, by media, by your own unconscious patterns. This is not about repressing your feelings, it's about liberating them from the gravitational pull of imbalance. Neuroscience has shown us that when the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm center, is constantly triggered, it hijacks the prefrontal cortex, the seat of higher reasoning, foresight, and decision-making. Which means the more emotionally extreme your reactions, the less access you have to your wisdom. You become impulsive, addictive, defensive. You say what you don't mean. You do what you regret, and you wonder why you feel stuck. This is not passion. This is programming. And here's the deeper layer. Those emotional extremes often aren't even yours. They're inherited patterns, echoes, stored charges from childhood, trauma, ancestral wounds, and unprocessed moments you were never taught to hold. The intensity you feel might be a loop, not a truth. An old circuit firing, not a fresh insight arising, and every time you swing with it, you strengthen it. You make the groove deeper. So how do you break the loop? You return to the center, and you learn to feel without becoming. This is a radical idea that you can feel your anger without becoming it, that you can witness your fear without bowing to it, that you can observe your sadness without collapsing into it. The middle way is not numbness, it's sobriety. It's the ability to stay awake while everything inside you wants to sleepwalk back into the old extremes. And the only thing that allows this is presence. Emotional presence is the most powerful state a human can inhabit. It's not intensity, it's intimacy with what is. It's when your system is calm enough to feel fully, but stable enough not to drown. It's when you become the container, not the chaos. It's when you can hold space for your storm and choose not to act from it. In ancient traditions, this is where transformation begins, not in transcendence, but in containment, in the sacred act of not reacting. The Stoics called this apatheia, not apathy, but freedom from the passions that disturb the soul. The Taoists called it non-resistance. And in modern neuroscience, we call it top-down regulation, the ability of the conscious mind to modulate the emotional brain, creating coherence, not conflict. But here's the paradox. The more you suppress emotion, the more it builds pressure. The more you indulge it, the more it takes over. The center is neither. It's the place where emotion is felt, heard, and released, not stored, not avoided, not worshipped. It's where energy moves again, where life becomes simple again, where breath returns to the body, and clarity returns to the mind. And from this center, a new kind of power emerges. Not the power that demands attention, but the one that needs nothing to affirm it. Not the power that overwhelms others, but the one that anchors them. Not the power of dominance, but the power of presence, unshakable, unpretentious, undeniable. This is the power of the middle way. It doesn't scream, it doesn't burn, it doesn't swing wildly in search of validation. It just is. And the more you live from this place, the more magnetic your life becomes. People feel it. They trust it, because you're not trying to be anything, you're not performing, you're not preaching from a peak or weeping from a valley. You're simply rooted, right in the middle, where the truth is. So take a moment. Scan your life. Where are you leaking power under the disguise of being passionate? Where are you swinging so hard in the name of love, success, faith, or freedom that you've lost the still point that gives all of it meaning? Come back, to breath, to body, to now, because your center is waiting, not to fix you, just to remind you that you were never broken. The pendulum law. Why every extreme secretly creates its opposite. Every movement has a consequence, every reaction has a return, and every extreme you chase secretly prepares its own collapse. This is not a theory, Faz, it's a law. In Taoism, it's called the law of the pendulum. In physics, it's the conservation of energy. In the Stoic tradition, it's emotional symmetry. Life, by its nature, seeks balance, and what you push too far in one direction must, by design, swing to the other. You've seen this in your own life. You restrict your food intake in the name of discipline, and find yourself binging weeks later, ashamed and exhausted. You pour your soul into someone, lose your identity in the process, and end up emotionally withdrawing to protect what's left of yourself. You commit to waking up at 5 a.m., cold showers, biohacking, 12-hour work sprints, monk mode dopamine detoxes, only to collapse into burnout, screens, and shame spirals when it becomes too much. It's not your fault. It's the pendulum. Extremes feel productive in the beginning. There's momentum, a sense of purpose, a narrative of transformation. But what most people miss is this: extremes don't create transformation, they create tension, and tension always demands release. So what happens? You bounce, you swing, you oscillate between guilt and indulgence, control and collapse, hyper-discipline and reckless abandon. And each time you swing, you lose a little more faith in yourself. Not because you lack willpower, but because you were never taught the truth. That lasting change doesn't come from force, it comes from rhythm. Real rhythm, the rhythm of Tao, is subtle. It's not a crash or a high, it's a flow, it builds. It's less dopamine, more dopamine stability, less adrenaline, more alignment, less drama, more depth. But here's the catch: this rhythm can only emerge when you stop feeding the pendulum. When you stop thinking that swinging harder will fix the swing itself. The Tao, the middle way, the centered state, it's not a place you push toward. It's the space you return to when you stop pushing entirely. It's not suppression, it's surrender. Not as in giving up, but giving over. Releasing your addiction to control, to intensity, to the idea that healing or progress has to hurt. Because the swing isn't just emotional or behavioral, it's energetic. When you live in extremes, your nervous system lives in a state of hypervigilance. You're always bracing, always trying to hold things together, always negotiating with yourself. And this creates an inner tension, subtle at first, but eventually it leaks into your sleep, your digestion, your hormones, your relationships, your ability to trust anything. Living in extremes becomes the most exhausting job you never applied for, and here's where it gets even more insidious. You begin to identify with the extremes. You say things like, I'm all or nothing, I'm intense, I go hard or I don't go at all, it's just who I am. But none of that is true. That's not who you are. That's who you became, while trying to survive a world that rewarded imbalance, worshipped intensity, and confused volatility with authenticity. The Tao teaches us that the real self lives in the center, not between two extremes, but beneath them. It's the silent space underneath the noise of your preferences, the stillness underneath the chaos of your emotions, the clarity beneath your compulsions to fix, to force, to swing. And when you start to live from this center, something shifts. You stop seeing life as something to conquer and start experiencing it as something to align with. You no longer need to overcompensate because you're not compensating for anything. You're not reacting, you're responding. You're not swinging, you're standing. From this place your energy returns, your breath deepens, your choices become simpler. You stop fighting the waves and start sailing with them, not to escape the storm, but to become the stillness that anchors through it. This is where your power lives, not in how hard you can swing, but in how still you can remain, not in how extreme your effort is, but in how effortless your presence becomes. And maybe this is what the wisest souls meant all along. That real mastery is not found in asceticism or indulgence, control or chaos, fire or ice. It's found in the quiet precision of your center, where nothing swings, where everything flows, where you finally remember that balance was never weakness. It was the purest form of intelligence. The hidden cost of chasing balance through control. The great paradox of balance is this: the more you try to control it, the more it slips through your fingers. Modern culture teaches us that balance is something you achieve, something you build, something you fight to protect. We talk about work-life balance like it's a math equation. We schedule self-care between Zoom calls. We download meditation apps, but get frustrated when they don't work fast enough. We chase calm like it's another checkbox on the to-do list, and then wonder why peace never feels real. But here's the truth. Balance is not something you do. It's something you become, and becoming it requires you to stop chasing it. This is where we begin to understand the difference between outer control and inner coherence, between managing your schedule, your macros, your habits, and actually being in harmony with life. The former leads to a constant state of negotiation. You try to make time, to fit it all in, to force a sense of order through endless productivity. But the nervous system doesn't respond to calendars or optimization hacks. It responds to presence. Presence doesn't come from control. It comes from letting go, from trusting the rhythm of your own body, your breath, your needs, even when they don't fit the plan. But here's what's truly dangerous about using control as your primary strategy for balance. It works for a while. It creates a short-lived sense of stability. You feel productive, in charge. You even get praised for it. Wow, you're so disciplined. You're killing it. You're such a high performer. But beneath that praise is a hidden erosion. You start losing your sensitivity to yourself. You override your signals in the name of progress. You learn to silence your exhaustion with caffeine, your loneliness with work, your intuition with logic. And the more you rely on control to find balance, the more fragile you become. Because all it takes is one thing to fall apart. One illness, one breakup, one missed opportunity, one emotional wave, and suddenly the entire house of cards collapses. Why? Because you never built real balance. You built a cage. And cages, no matter how sophisticated or high performance, still suffocate you in the end. This is why the Tao doesn't speak of balance as a structure. It speaks of it as a space of non-resistance. A space where things move through you, a space where you notice before you react, a space where effort becomes alignment and action becomes expression. The Stoics called this ataraxia, the lucid stillness of the soul, unbothered by outer storms, not because nothing happens, but because nothing owns you. And the path to this space begins not by trying to control everything, but by questioning the impulse to control it all. Ask yourself, why do I need to be so in control of everything? What am I afraid will happen if I don't? Whose approval am I still trying to earn? What pain am I avoiding by staying busy? What emotions do I bury under my plans? These are not small questions. They are sacred doors. And when you walk through them honestly, you'll see something life-changing. That real balance doesn't look like perfection. It doesn't mean your emotions never fluctuate or your plans never shift. It means that your center no longer depends on them. You stop being the puppet of your environment. You become the observer, the still eye in the storm, the one who acts without forcing, speaks without reacting, lives without defending. This is not passivity. It's clarity, it's power in its most refined form. Power not as domination, but as presence. Because when you're centered, truly centered, nothing owns you. Not your past, not your mood, not the chaos around you. You can participate in life fully without being consumed by it. And in that moment, you're no longer chasing balance. You are balance. You are the Tao in motion. And the world, without even knowing why, begins to move with you. The ego's addiction to chaos. Why stillness feels uncomfortable. There's a reason you keep swinging, even when you know it's draining you. A reason silence feels threatening. A reason peace feels boring. It's not that you want chaos. It's that a part of you, the part you call me, was built inside it. The ego is not evil, it's not your enemy. It's a mechanism, a necessary one. It catalogues experience. It protects you. It gives you a story you can follow. But when the story becomes the only reality you recognize, the ego stops being a tool and becomes a tyrant. And this tyrant feeds on movement, noise, distraction, polarity, drama. Why? Because the ego is always measuring. Is this safe? Is this dangerous? Am I winning or losing? Do they approve of me or not? It needs contrast to know it exists. Stillness is its death sentence, because in stillness, there's nothing to compare, nothing to prove, no one to outperform, no one to become, only presence. And presence doesn't have a name, it doesn't care about your status, it doesn't cling to old identities, it's not interested in who was right or wrong. It just is. That's terrifying for the ego, because it can't control it, it can't label it. And if it can't label it, it can't survive in it. This is why your nervous system gets agitated when you try to rest, why you feel restless on vacation, why you reach for your phone in the silence, why meditation feels like wasted time when you're new to it. Because without the usual noise, the ego doesn't know what to do with itself. It starts whispering, "You're being lazy. You're falling behind. You should be doing more. This calm means you're not growing." But those are not the whispers of truth. They're the death rattles of a part of you that only ever knew itself through noise. And here's the revelation. The discomfort you feel in stillness is not a sign you're doing it wrong. It's a sign you're finally meeting the parts of you that have been hiding behind movement. The overachiever who outran her shame. The perfectionist who used control to avoid pain. The peacemaker who performed serenity while burning inside. The addict who mistook dopamine for love. The identity built on urgency, emergency, and applause. Stillness unmasks them all. It exposes the lie that you need to be someone all the time. It challenges the belief that you are only as worthy as you are busy. It reveals that the storm outside was never the real storm. The real storm was your own inability to sit in your own presence without flinching. But here's the sacred turning point. The ego doesn't need to be destroyed. It needs to be relieved of duty. It's tired too. It's been trying to protect you from a threat that no longer exists. And when you stop identifying with its voice, when you learn to watch it instead of obey it, something shifts. You begin to sense another layer of self. Quieter, simpler, still. Not a voice, but an awareness. Not a thought, but a space. Not an emotion, but a witness. And in that moment, that subtle, quiet moment, you touch a truth more powerful than any identity could ever offer. You are not the one swinging. You are not the pendulum. You are the space through which it swings, and that space never moves. This is not theory. This is lived experience. And every time you sit in stillness, even for a breath, you strengthen your connection to it. You increase your tolerance for peace. You loosen the ego's grip. You train your nervous system to recognize calm as safety, not threat. And slowly something begins to happen that no book, no hack, no guru can manufacture. The noise no longer owns you. The highs no longer seduce you. The lows no longer define you. And the chaos of the world becomes just weather passing through a sky that doesn't change. You become steady, not because nothing moves, but because you no longer move with everything. And this perhaps is what the ancient masters meant by true freedom, the sacred science of the center, where power meets peace. We tend to think of power as something loud, something that shakes the earth and echoes through rooms. We imagine power as speed, domination, conquest, success. But in every spiritual tradition that endured beyond empire, there's another kind of power, one that doesn't scream, one that doesn't seek applause, one that exists precisely because it needs nothing. Here it's the power of the center. You can't hold it, you can't post it, you can't sell it. But when you touch it, well, everything changes. The Taoists called it the empty center. The Buddhists saw it as the middle path. The Stoics taught that virtue lives between deficiency and excess. In quantum physics, it mirrors the point of superposition, a place of infinite potential, not collapsed into extremes. And in life, you've tasted it, even if only for a moment. That day you stopped fighting your feelings and just let yourself be. That breath where you realized you didn't need to win, you just needed to stay open. That second where you were fully aware and fully at peace, for no reason at all. That was the center. Not a place of compromise, but a place of precision. Not a balancing act, but a state of coherence. Not neutrality out of fear, but presence born of truth. The center is not the absence of polarity. It is the transcendence of it. When you stand in it, you're no longer pushed and pulled by every thought, every mood, every opinion. You act, not react. You listen, not absorb. You respond, not collapse. And something remarkable happens in this space. You stop leaking energy into everything you can't control. Your nervous system calms. Your decisions clarify. Your words carry weight. Your presence becomes medicine. But here's what no one tells you. Finding the center isn't an achievement. It's a practice. The world will not stop trying to provoke your extremes. Your own mind will still pull at you, to judge, to defend, to chase, to withdraw. Your emotions will rise like tides. The pendulum will move. But now, you begin to sense where not to go. You stop feeding the swing. You stop chasing highs to escape lows. You stop defining your truth by your feelings. You stop mistaking movement for meaning. And in that still spacious moment between impulses, you make contact with your deeper intelligence. It doesn't yell, it doesn't argue. It doesn't flatter your ego. It just knows. And the knowing is enough. This is why mystics sat in caves, why prophets wandered into deserts, why sages returned again and again to silence, not to escape the world, but to stop becoming it. Because in the world of form, every shape has its opposite, every identity has its counterforce. Every opinion has its shadow, but the center is unopposed. It's not trapped in the game, and the more time you spend there, the more you realize you don't need to pick sides when you live from center. You don't need to prove your worth when you move from stillness. You don't need to manipulate reality when you're aligned with it. And that alignment, that sacred coherence, gives birth to a kind of power that doesn't fade when attention fades. A power that doesn't rise with praise and fall with criticism. A power that cannot be taken away, because it was never dependent on them. It was always yours. When you're centered, you're not harder. You're freer. You're not passive. You're precise. You're not cold. You're calm. And your calm becomes contagious, not because you control the room, but because you no longer need to. Others will feel it. They won't always understand it. Some may even resist it, because your stillness threatens their storm, but the ones who are ready will draw near, not to follow you, but to find their own center. This is how peace spreads, not through debate, not through dominance, but through presence, through example, through the quiet courage of a person who knows who they are and no longer needs the world to confirm it. This is not weakness, this is mastery. And mastery is not something you arrive at. It's something you return to again and again, every time you remember. The center is not something you find. It's what remains when you stop getting pulled away. Integrating the yin and yang, transcendence is not suppression. Most people misunderstand balance. They think it means cutting themselves in half, suppressing desire, rejecting emotion, pretending not to care. They think that finding peace requires silencing passion, that to be spiritual is to be numb. But this isn't balance. It's avoidance. And avoidance, no matter how noble it looks, is just fear with a new name. True balance is not about removing opposites. It's about embracing them without being dominated by them. To live in the Tao, in the center, you do not erase the yin or the yang. You honor both. You see both. You feel both. And you transcend them by becoming the space in which they dance, not the dancer tied to either side. Yin is rest. Yang is movement. Yin is silence. Yang is speech. Yin is the moon. Yang is the sun. Yin is surrender. Yang is action. When one dominates, chaos is born. When they flow together, life moves in harmony. But the integration of opposites requires one thing most of us were never taught: witnessing. To witness means to observe without identification, to feel without fusing, to hold space without trying to fix, change, or rush away. You begin to notice the rise of anger and breathe instead of explode. You feel the pull of desire and smile instead of obsess. You sense the grip of fear and soften instead of retreating. This is not suppression, this is aliveness with awareness. Suppression is fear of your own energy. Integration is mastery of it. Because what we resist doesn't disappear, it hides and grows in the shadows. But what we allow into the light loses its grip. That's the paradox. The Tao isn't asking you to cut yourself down the middle. It's inviting you to open yourself wide enough to hold the paradox, to be soft and strong, clear and compassionate, surrendered and empowered, present and potent. We are not meant to live in one polarity. We are meant to move through them, like breath, like waves, like music. Even your body knows this. Your heartbeat is not a flat line, it pulses. Your breath is not constant, it flows in and out. Your brain, your hormones, your rhythms, they all follow this eternal dance of opposites. When one side is ignored, disease arises. When both are honored, health returns. So ask yourself, where in your life have you become rigid? Where have you clung to only one half of yourself? Where are you living from yang without yin, from doing without being, from giving without receiving, from control without trust? And where have you collapsed into yin without yang, from stillness into stagnation, from reflection into paralysis, from surrender into self-abandonment? Balance isn't about being equal all the time. It's about being attuned. It's not about standing still, but about moving from center. You can feel it. That moment when your yes is clean, not reactive. That moment when your no is calm, not defensive. That moment when you speak not to win, but to express truth. That moment when you rest not to escape, but to restore. These are not spiritual performances. They are signs that you are learning the Tao, not from a book, but from life itself. And life, when truly lived, will teach you how to integrate every part of yourself. Your shadows are not mistakes, they are messengers. Your cravings are not curses, they are compass points. Your wounds are not weights, they are portals. If you meet them with judgment, they become blocks. If you meet them with curiosity, they become teachers. And when you allow both light and dark to exist within you without resistance, something incredible happens. You stop being split. You're no longer at war with yourself. You feel whole. And in that wholeness, a new kind of energy is born, steady, vibrant, expansive, not erratic, not conditional, but sourced from something deeper than mood, deeper than logic, deeper than anyone else's opinion. You become the harmony, not the noise. And the world begins to feel different, not because it changed, but because you are no longer swinging. You are standing, you are witnessing, you are allowing, you are whole. The sweet spot of effortless action, the power of Wu Wei. There is a point in sailing called the sweet spot. It's the precise angle at which the sail catches the wind, not too loose, not too tight, and the boat strains, too loose and you drift. But at the sweet spot there is no fight, only flow. This is the Tao. This is the middle path. And this, in Taoist wisdom, is known as Wu Wei. Wu Wei does not mean doing nothing. It means doing without forcing, acting without over-efforting, moving without pushing against the river. In a world that idolizes struggle, Wu Wei sounds like a myth. We're told, if you're not exhausted, you're not trying hard enough. If it doesn't hurt, it's not real. If you didn't suffer, you didn't earn it. This mindset is the religion of extremes, and it's quietly stealing your energy, your joy, and your presence. But there is another way. The way of precision, not pressure. The way of alignment, not anxiety. The way of intelligence, not intensity. Wu Wei is not laziness, it's mastery. It's what happens when your action is so aligned with the rhythm of reality that it no longer feels like effort. It's what athletes call the flow state, what musicians call being in the pocket, what monks call living in the now. You stop fighting the wind and instead you adjust the sail, and suddenly things begin to move with you. Decisions feel obvious, timing becomes graceful. Conversations open without tension, your body heals faster, your focus sharpens, your relationships breathe again. This isn't magic, it's physics. It's the natural result of moving from your center instead of your extremes. Because when you're centered, you're not wasting energy on resistance. You're not caught in reactivity. You're not swinging from impulse to impulse. You're not leaking energy through fear, control, or self-doubt. Instead, your presence becomes potent. Like a laser beam, soft but precise. In Wu Wei, time stretches. There is no rush, no panic, just deep, clear responsiveness. You act when it's time to act. You rest when it's time to rest. You speak when the words are ripe. You listen when silence is wiser. This rhythm is not something you control, it's something you feel. But you can't feel it when you're clinging to extremes, when you're overthinking, overreacting, overdoing. To enter Wu Wei, you must return to the center, to the space between thoughts, the breath before reaction, the moment where you don't know, and that's okay. That's the gate. That's the moment where the universe can finally speak through you, not as a voice in your head, but as a movement in your being. And yes, it takes trust, because we've been programmed to believe that surrender equals loss, that if we're not grinding, hustling, burning out, we're falling behind. But this is the noise of a culture addicted to extremes. The Tao is quiet, Wu Wei whispers, and only those who are still enough can hear it. So what does it look like? You're in a conversation that's turning tense, and instead of proving your point, you pause, you breathe, you feel into the deeper current, and you respond not to win but to connect. That's Wu Wei. You wake up unsure of what to do next in life, and instead of rushing into distractions, you sit with the unknown. You let the silence rearrange you. And then out of nowhere, clarity arises. That's Wu Wei. You've been forcing a goal for months and nothing works, and then one day, you stop forcing. You let go. And the solution arrives through an unexpected phone call. That's Wu Wei. This is not randomness, this is rhythm. The rhythm of a life lived in harmony with its own intelligence. You don't need to conquer the world to find peace. You just need to stop fighting the flow. Let go of the oars and feel the current. Release the clenched jaw and soften the breath. Step back from the noise and re-enter the now. Wu Wei isn't something you do. It's what remains when you no longer resist what is. And in that space, miracles don't feel like magic. They feel like nature, returning to itself. The wind was always moving. You just needed to adjust your sail. The center as a place of power, not weakness. You were taught to chase the edge, to push harder, reach further, move faster. Because that's where the victory is, right? On the edge of your limits, in the intensity, in the noise. But what if that was a lie? What if the most powerful place in the universe is actually still? Not passive, not frozen, but still, like the eye of a hurricane. The center is not weakness, it's where the forces cancel each other out. And in that cancellation, you find clarity. In that balance, you become invincible. Imagine a pendulum. At the edges, the motion is fast, violent, exhausting, but at the center it can stay at rest forever. Not because it's lazy, but because nothing pulls it off course. That is power. In martial arts, the greatest masters don't overpower. They neutralize. They stand in the center of chaos and remain unmoved. They let the opponent's energy collapse upon itself. Because they've found the point where force becomes obsolete, the center. The same applies to life. The person who is reactive, easily triggered, emotionally extreme, is always being pulled, tossed, swung by circumstances. But the person who has learned to center themselves in any situation cannot be manipulated, cannot be disturbed. They may still feel deeply, but they no longer live at the mercy of every emotional storm. Because here's the paradox. The more centered you are, the more deeply you can feel, without losing yourself. When you're extreme, emotions control you. But when you're centered, you can hold space for them without becoming them. You become the container, not the content, the The sky, not the storm. That's not weakness. That's inner power. That's emotional sovereignty. And we've misunderstood it. We thought balance was boring, that if we lived in the middle, we'd lose passion, fire, ambition. But that's because we confuse drama with depth. We confuse chaos with vitality. True power doesn't need chaos to feel alive. True power is subtle. True power is stillness with direction. Look at the sun. It doesn't scream to be noticed. It simply radiates, constantly, reliably, with no extremes. And yet, everything grows because of it. Your inner sun is no different. When you stop swinging between guilt and pride, anxiety and apathy, control and collapse, you find a state where your energy stabilizes, where your decisions no longer come from reactivity, but from resonance. And from that place, you begin to access something rare in the modern world: neutral power. Neutral power is not cold, it's not detached, it's just not personal. It's no longer about you proving anything. It's about acting from alignment, not addiction to outcomes. This is why Buddha taught the middle way, why Marcus Aurelius wrote about not being ruled by pleasure or pain, why the Stoics warned against both indulgence and suppression, because both extremes are masks. They hide fear. They burn energy. They consume your attention. But the center is where you see clearly, because you're not being yanked, you're observing. And from that space, your actions become surgical, focused, elegant. You stop bleeding energy into every trigger. You stop overcorrecting. You stop chasing what you don't need and defending what was never yours, because you finally remember, the middle is not mediocrity, it's mastery, not by doing more, but by doing only what is needed, no more, no less. So ask yourself, where are you swinging right now? What internal pendulum have you been fueling without even realizing? Are you burning out trying to feel in control, or collapsing from trying to avoid pain? You don't have to go from one extreme to the other. You don't have to prove anything by breaking yourself. That's not strength, that's survival. Real strength is being able to sit still while the world pulls at you, and not move unless it's necessary. Real strength is being calm in the middle of contradiction. Real strength is choosing to respond, not react. Real strength is knowing you could, but you don't have to. And from there, from that still, balanced core, everything changes, because now you're no longer being lived by life. You're participating in it. You're no longer a puppet of your impulses. You're the presence behind them. This is what it means to live in the Tao, to walk the middle path, to trade the drama of extremes for the elegance of balance. The world will still try to pull you, but you'll know better. You'll remember, the center is not a compromise, it's the source. When you return to the center, everything returns to you. This is not just a video, it's a mirror, a moment of pause in a world of noise, a whisper of truth cutting through the chaos, not to overwhelm you, but to remind you that there is a place within you that has never been overwhelmed, a place that has watched you swing between extremes, with patience, with silence, with love, and that place is still here, waiting. You've searched for peace in performance, for identity in conflict, for meaning in movement. But what if everything you've been chasing already exists in the space where you finally stop chasing? What if the very life you've been running toward is the one that's waiting for you the moment you stop running? This is the wisdom of the center. When you return to the center, everything returns to you, not because the world changes, but because you become able to receive it. You stop pushing away the good because you don't feel worthy. You stop sabotaging the calm because it feels unfamiliar. You stop pulling the pendulum in either direction, and you let it rest. And in that rest, a new kind of intelligence awakens. The intelligence of harmony. The intelligence that doesn't need to control because it trusts. You begin to see that life is not made of black and white, good and bad, win and lose. Life is made of rhythm, like breath, like tides, like the heart itself, expansion and contraction, inhale and exhale, stillness and movement. And the only place that doesn't fight this rhythm is the center. You start to live from that space. Instead of resisting what is, you witness it. Instead of rushing to fix what you feel, you allow it. Instead of clinging to the high or fearing the low, you rest in the awareness that watches both. And from there, everything softens. The shame that pushed you to overachieve dissolves. The fear that kept you frozen releases. The guilt, the pride, the proving, gone. You're left with what's real, you. Not the version of you built in response to extremes, but the one that remains when extremes fall away. The quiet witness, the unshaken presence, the one who doesn't need to swing because it already sees. This is the you that lives in the Tao, that doesn't fight the river, but flows with it. That doesn't demand life obey, but aligns with what life already is. And this you is powerful. Because from the center, your power no longer comes from force, but from alignment. You no longer need to chase momentum. You become momentum. Your very stillness becomes magnetic. Your presence starts to open doors. Your calm begins to ripple through others. You don't have to preach, you just are. And being is enough. This is not a message about doing less. It's a message about doing only what is real, living with clarity, speaking with precision, acting with intention, loving without possession, letting go without fear. Because you know that every moment you live from the center, you restore not only yourself, but the world around you. Your relationships shift, your body heals, your decisions clarify, your intuition awakens. You don't need to scream, you don't need to convince. You've touched something deeper than approval. You've found home. The home that exists not in a place but in a position, the precise point where your inner and outer worlds harmonize, where you no longer fight life, but collaborate with it. So if there's one thing to take from this entire journey, let it be this. The world will always offer extremes. It will tempt you with all or nothing choices. It will call you to pick a side, react, divide, collapse, explode. But you are not here to be flung back and forth like a pendulum. You are here to anchor the axis, to find the still point in the chaos, to be the center in the storm, to embody the Tao, not as a concept but as a lived reality. And when you live from that space, you won't need to explain yourself. Your life will speak for you. A life of harmony, a life of quiet power, a life no longer stolen by extremes, a life fully returned to its center. And when you return to the center, you return to yourself. Breathe. Feel your center now. Feel what it's like to rest, even just for a moment out in the middle, not running, not resisting, just witnessing. Now imagine what your life would look like if you lived from this space every day. If this message touched something in you, take a deep breath and type in the comments, "I return to the center." Let the algorithm feel your alignment. Let others know they're not alone. And above all, let your nervous system feel what peace actually is, not in the silence, not in the noise, but in the space between. That's where you are. That's where life begins again.